So welcome everybody to today's webinar. We will be talking to Justice about the work that they do. My name is Chantal Cook. I'm the CEO of NALP. With us is Amanda Hamilton, our patron. Also Nigel Davey, who looks after all our marketing. He'll also be doing kind of tech stuff in the background. So if you have any problems, then you can message Nigel via the chat if you need to. And he'll be popping some links into the chat as well for things that we're talking about, if there's things that you need to know that you can link through to. And I'd also very much like to welcome our special guest today, Emma Snell, who is the Legal Policy Manager at Justice. Now, Justice is a cross-party law reform organisation that works to build a fairer UK justice system and puts it within everybody's reach. And that's something I know that as paralegals, we all feel very passionate about. That's access to justice at a reasonable cost, or at least giving people access to justice, which doesn't happen as much these days. They've been around 65 years, and in that time they've helped transform the landscape for the better, and they always lead what they do. Their policies and so on are based on evidence, expertise, and a focus on practical solutions. So we're going to find out a bit more about justice and also how paralegals can get involved. So Emma, thank you very much for joining us and welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Chantal.
So I know I've given you a little bit of an introduction as to what you do, but maybe you could tell us a bit more in your own words about the work of Justice.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's already been mentioned that we're a law reform organisation. So we work primarily on the kind of policy side across the whole range of the justice system. So we work on like civil law issues. We have a big criminal justice programme, immigration, family law, and sort of more broadly kind of public and administrative law as well. So our work is sort of divided into three strands. So firstly, we have our more reactive parliamentary work. So that might be analysing pieces of legislation as they're going through Parliament, commenting on that legislation, suggesting and drafting amendments. We also respond to government consultations. So, for example, at the moment, the Law Commission is doing a big consultation on the Criminal Case Review Commission. So that's something that we're submitting to. We submitted to the sentencing review and the Leveson review that he's doing at the moment. The second strand is longer form policy projects or projects that are geared around helping lawyers and legal professionals with their practice, but with a bit of a policy slant. So, for example, last year we created a guide to promoting racial justice at inquests. So it was a guide for lawyers that they can use to make representations about race where relevant in state-related deaths at inquests and things like that. And then the final strand is third-party interventions. So that is work kind of in the courts. We recently, for example, intervened in a criminal appeal where we raised kind of points of public interest around the use of so-called kind of gang affiliation evidence. So the use of music and things like that as evidence. And the appellant in that case had his conviction acquitted, which was a really great result for us. So those are our three strands. In terms of what I do, I work mostly on the criminal justice side and on the inquest and inquiry side, which is why you've heard mostly about those things so far. And in terms of just a snapshot of things that I'm doing at the moment, I'm working with a group of lawyers to develop a proposal for an oversight mechanism that looks at inquiry recommendations and would ensure that recommendations coming out of things like Grenfell are appropriately monitored and pressure is put on government for them to implement those recommendations. That's an example of something. I'm involved in a few other criminal appeals concerning the use of music and things like that as evidence as well.
Mm-hmm. And what sort of background did you personally have to have in order to have that role?
So I actually started as an intern 4 years ago. So I had a law conversion and I also did have a law master's, but you wouldn't need that to be an intern at Justice. This blends, so we have kind of intern and fellow roles at Justice, which require you to have a UK qualifying degree. But that can be either an LLB, a GDL, part one of the SQE, or the SILEX CPCQ advanced stage qualification. There's a list on the Law Society website of UK qualifying degrees. I think that's all of them. But yeah, if people were interested in applying for any of the roles we have, it's definitely worth checking on the Law Society website. In terms of other kind of experience, when we're recruiting for interns in particular, but also for fellows, there's no particular experience that we are looking for. However, any practical experience working in law and in the legal profession is really helpful. Any experience that you might have that demonstrates more directly an interest in the types of work that we do. So if you're, for example, a paralegal at a firm that does immigration, then that's great because we do lots of immigration work and you'll have a very good understanding of what's going on the ground. And also kind of having paralegal experience also gives you loads of the other skills that you need for a role like this. So in terms of being able to work to deadlines and work under pressure and work independently, but also chip in as part of a team, all of those things that are important in most jobs, but definitely at Justice, where we do have a really small kind of tight-knit team, are things that you would definitely be getting as a paralegal as well.
And I guess because I was talking to somebody about recruitment within the law sector, and I guess having an internship at somewhere like Justice is a great way of getting experience as well. So perhaps you haven't done a huge amount yet, or you've just qualified or something like this. This is a good way of really getting your teeth in, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And all our internships are and fellowships are of course paid, and something that's really good about them is that you'll be put with a member of our policy team, so be it me or one of the lawyers, but there's lots of opportunity to work across various different areas, and we're always quite keen to enable people to get exposure to areas that they're interested in. So if you're someone who's a paralegal at the moment, but is thinking about wanting to go into practice and maybe are not 100% sure where you'd like to practice, what you're interested in, coming and working at somewhere like Justice allows you to get a bit of exposure to kind of different areas of the legal system. And I know that that's something that kind of previous interns and fellows have found really helpful. And also Justice is quite a well-known organisation as well within the legal sector. So if you're looking to apply for pupillage or for training contracts, I would like to think that it's not kind of harm you having Justice on your CV. And we, a lot of our interns and fellows do go on to do kind of roles elsewhere in the legal sector as well.
And I'm guessing as well, the internships must be quite competitive. It's not like a kind of a case of you're, desperate for people and not enough candidates. So if someone were interested in doing an internship, what would make them stand out? What would make you go, oh yeah, we want to talk to these people?
Yeah, so you're right. They are very competitive. So I think the most important thing is demonstrating that you have a really, really good understanding of how things work on the ground in one of our areas of focus. So I think you can get that through, you can get that to an extent through kind of desk-based research. But one of the questions that we always have on all of our applications is, can you identify an acute challenge in the justice system, and what would you do to address that challenge? And I think if you, through your work as a paralegal or through maybe volunteering that you've done, with organizations like Liberty is a really good place to have done volunteering, or there are loads of refugee charities or victim support. If you can bring in kind of examples of things that you've seen in the legal sector, in your work, and anything that you've done, and link that to the kind of acute challenge that you're talking about, that would make a really strong application. And also demonstrating that you can think innovatively about solutions as well. That's often something that people are able to talk about challenges in the justice system, but are maybe slightly less able to talk about solutions. And again, if you can draw on your experience, if you can say, as a paralegal, I've seen this gap in terms of legal aid provision, for instance, and I think it could be plugged in this way, or I've seen this gap in terms of inefficiency, and I think there could be really interesting tech solutions. That would be a really, really strong kind of answer to those sorts of questions. So, yeah.
That sounds actually really exciting, because it's that opportunity. I mean, we all do it, don't we? We kind of go, well, if I was in charge, I'd do this. I mean, it's kind of that classic pub conversation, isn't it? It's how we'd all change the world. We put the world to right. So this sounds amazing. This is an opportunity for, if you've seen something, to actually have a hand in making a change like that. So I can really understand why you love your job, which kind of brings me on to, I guess I've almost answered it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What specifically is it that really makes you go, yeah, this is the job I love, and I'm here for a while?
Yeah, so I think that is definitely part of it. I mean, it's a really, really, I mean, it's a very difficult time for the justice system in lots and lots of ways. But I think there's also lots of like opportunity there as well. I think definitely in terms of tech and innovation and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that something that I hear from people in practice a lot is that frustration that they see that things aren't working, and they see all these problems, but they don't, necessarily have the time in their busy practices, or they wouldn't, they're not within organizations whose business it is kind of pushing for that systems level change. And I, really value being able to go and talk to practitioners and understand what's going on the ground, and then kind of translating that and communicating that to decision makers, and feeling like you're able to bridge that gap in a way that can be really meaningful and bring about really important change. I think another thing that I really like about working at Justice in particular, and I think that this is very important for people who are also looking at coming in those intern and fellow roles potentially, is that it's a really, really non-hierarchical organization. And that is people say that, but it is genuinely the case. Everyone has a really strong voice at Justice, and if you're good and you show that you're good, you will be given responsibility that's commensurate with how good you are. And that means that our kind of interns and fellows coming in can very quickly, be at a point where they're, producing first drafts of briefings or first drafts of amendments, and obviously working closely with us and supported by us, but you're not going to be making people cups of tea like you would be really, really involved in the kind of policy making process, and in conversations about what we're going to do about certain developments. And I think that that's something that's really valuable about working at Justice.
And for the things that you've been working on over the last 4 years, is there something you're particularly proud of, or something you particularly like to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've sort of I'm very proud of the kind of court work intervention stuff that we've done. It's Yeah, it's a really great feeling to, not only do the kind of policy stuff, but to be able to step in, in these cases where you see kind of huge amounts of injustice, and injustice that goes beyond the individual case, that is more systems wide, and to be able to kind of draw the court's attention to that. Another thing that I'm really proud of is I did a big report on magistrates' courts, and it was one of the first kind of larger scale like observational research kind of studies that had been done in the magistrates' courts, and we got volunteers, uni students, trainees, etc., to go out and look at how remand decisions were being made in the magistrates' courts, and got some really good data and got an academic to analyse that. And we know that that's been really impactful and taken seriously by the Ministry of Justice. So that was great as well.
It does sound like a fantastic job. So as a quick roundup before we hand over to the questions, kind of, because when I kind of first came into this, I thought to myself, oh, this is about, you know, for paralegals, it's maybe if you're early in your career and want to get some experience, but actually I can also see it being for perhaps career paralegals who've got, you know, 10, 15, 20 years under their belt, but actually want to do something that makes even more of a difference. I mean, I think working in the law, generally you're motivated by the fact that you want to make some kind of a difference anyway in the world. That's, I think, often a lot of people's motivation. But this feels like you could take that extra step forward. Is that kind of a fair assessment? It's for wherever you are in your career?
Yeah, I would say so. So we have a few roles that are live or becoming live. And I think definitely for the fellowship roles. So we've got a criminal justice fellowship advertised at the moment, and we've got a senior legal fellowship that's coming up very soon. And those are kind of 1 year roles, but you know, there's always kind of possibilities for extension, etc. But they're 1 year in the initial term, and I think definitely those are very, very suitable for people with more experience, and then similarly, even with the kind of intern roles, I know it's called an internship and people associate that with being quite early in your career. But again, you know, I was an intern and then I was a fellow, and now I am where I am now. So I think that even if you're slightly further on in your career, it's still something that's worth considering if you're interested in moving more into the policy kind of space. I think it's a really good kind of foot in the door.
Lovely, thank you. Well, I hope that's kind of inspired some of our paralegals to think, oh, this could be a route for me, or somewhere that I could contribute, or somewhere I could also get more experience and so on. So if you've got any questions, please do pop them into the chat, and I'm sure Emma will be more than happy. I'm volunteering you here, Emma, but I'm never going to let it. We'll be more than happy to answer those questions for you if there's anything you'd like to know a bit more about justice and so on. So I'm going to hand over to Nigel to ask some of those questions that have been coming in.
It says, what's the difference between a fellowship and an internship? Is it for more experienced individuals?
So not necessarily. The main primary difference is that fellowships are longer. And I think that, well, there is an expectation that if you're coming in as a fellow, you're hitting the ground running sooner. So you'd be given a higher level of responsibility because you probably do have a bit more experience. That said, we have interns that come in, are given more support initially because they're more geared towards the more recent leavers, but who really hit the ground running and then are doing essentially the same work. So there's not a really formal distinction. It's more that we maybe have slightly different expectations when people come in the different roles, and the internships are normally 3 months, whereas the fellowships are normally 6 months to a year, and then there's kind of slightly more scope for extending.
Okay. And this isn't a question, but what I would say, Emma, you in a year or so's time, you may be getting an application from Kaylee, because she says this has been really enlightening, exactly the path she was hoping to follow when signing up with NALP. So yeah, expect her application in a little while.
I have a question on Kaylee's behalf. Okay, so Kaylee, I'm asking this in your name. Okay, let's just clarify. So Kaylee gets to the point where she says, yep, I want to apply to Justice. What's the process? Is it just on the website where she would look, or are there other places that you advertise? Talk us through that.
So I mean, yeah, the best thing would be to keep an eye on the website, but we also follow our social media as well, because we'll be advertising everything through our social media, and that way you definitely won't miss anything. And then we advertise through the kind of charity jobs and things like that. I think we advertise through Young Legal Aid Lawyers, but definitely the best way is to look at our social media. And in terms of the application, it's an application form through a kind of Google form. The questions are kind of always the same. So you could look now at any number of the applications that we have up to get an idea of what the questions will almost certainly be in a few years. I don't think they've changed since I applied, so I think they're probably going to remain the same for a while. And then it's often now 2 rounds of interview, because we do get we do get lots of applicants now, which is great. But there are lots of opportunities as well. So it's, yeah.
Okay. And then there's just been another question come in from Varsha around home working, I'm guessing. Do I need to have a UK address in order to apply for a position at Justice?
So if you're a British citizen and have a right to work in the UK, you can apply for the role. I think the difficulty is that for various kind of tax reasons, we do need people to be in the UK for a certain amount of time, particularly if you're applying for roles that are slightly longer. So I don't think, for example, if you were to apply for a year-long fellowship, you could do that entirely abroad. I think it would be different if you applied for an internship, but what I would do is I would email she's looking to move back to the UK. Oh, then yeah, you'd be absolutely fine. Yeah, if you have a right to work in the UK, then it's fine that you don't live here now. It would just be tricky if you're planning to not live in the UK for the entirety of the time that you'd be working at Justice.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for your questions as well, and for your lovely comments. It seems like it's been a very insightful webinar. So thank you very much, Emma. It's definitely an area that I think, well, it's certainly an area that I didn't know a lot about, and I suspect I'm not alone. So thank you very much for enlightening us and letting us know more about the work at Justice. And I can imagine you might find over the next few years quite a few NALP members knocking on your door, but filling in those applications for internships at Justice. So thank you so much for your time and for sharing your information with us. That's Emma Snell from Justice. Nigel has put the link to Justice in the chat as well. So if you want to click onto their website and have a look, you can certainly do that. And of course, this webinar is recorded and will be available to members on the website if you feel you want to go back over it and get some top tips when you fill in your application form at some point in the future. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all to everyone who's been on the webinar today. Have yourselves a lovely, lovely afternoon. Thank you.